Toshiba Studios.
This is Sactown Sports.
Sactown Sports.
Headlines.
Not the boring, generic milquetoast stuff coming from the network in Connecticut.
I describe him as the best, obviously.
Cattles.
He throws it out there, speaks his mind. That's cool.
And Ramie.
He's supposed to make people laugh. He's just an expert at it.
Cattles and Ramie.
Live and local in the afternoon.
Sactown Sports.
I don't hear me. Oh, there I am. That is the show, and Cattles is here. I'm the Ramie half of Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports, 1140, taking you right up to Kings and Wolves game night at 3:30. A bit of confusion there at the top. For a second, I heard both the update bed and the open. Nick was still sanitizing his workstation.
Hello.
After the Deuce and Mo show. Now he's all headphoned up, mic'd up, ready to go. How are you this afternoon, Nick?
I'm doing well. See,
Good.
if people think that we're being over dramatic about the timing of all of this and that literally when the show usually pops on, I just get my mic on in time.
Yeah, he needs that update. He needs that minute in the update. He needs every second he can get in the lead up to the show to get his workstation all worked out.
So no update at the top of the program today. And what do you know? I just looked at Ramie, said, yeah, you're going to have to take over here for the next couple of seconds.
I've done that before. I've done this.
It's not your first.
Nothing new, right?
Not your first
rodeo.
I was just going to say that. Use the JR. Yes, not your first rodeo. Anyway, good Monday to all of you. But it was a not-so-good Monday.
Is it a good Monday, Nick? Is it?
Yeah, it was. Look, it was a little bit difficult, obviously, yesterday to watch that game. And we're going to talk a lot about the Niners today. We'll slide in some Kings as well. As Ramie just told you, they get ready for the good old back-to-back in Minnesota. They played on Saturday. They're back for today. 3:30 is game night. So we got you for 90 minutes here. But we start with the disappointing NFC Championship game, and that's really the only word I could come up with as I was thinking about the game yesterday. Disappointing. And
that was your first adjective?
Yeah.
Mine was sad.
Sad would be a good one. Yeah, sad would be a good one.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there, and as soon as Brock Purdy goes down, you just feel like, well, the only hope that the Niners have in this game is if the Eagles have a complete and utter debacle, unless they just melt down, unless your defense turns them over 3 times, unless you get a special teams touchdown, unless something happens, usually out of the norm, right? That something happens out of the norm. You just don't have much of a chance in that game. Purdy goes down. He came back. We knew he wasn't healthy. Everybody knew he wasn't healthy. He couldn't throw the ball more than 5 yards downfield.
That's what it looked like.
He just threw a couple of screens and handed the football off. That was it. He was rendered useless by that injury. And here was Brock in the postgame talking about it.
Yeah, just, my arm just felt like it stretched out. Just felt like really a lot of just shocks all over from my elbow down to my wrist, front and back. Just pain, really, all over.
Front and back and front, just pain all over the place. Here was more from the quarterback.
I have no idea. We getting an MRI tomorrow. It is a little swollen in the forearm area near the elbow, and that's all I know, man. It's still in pain, obviously, but just got to get the MRI tomorrow.
Now, of course, Ramie, as soon as Purdy went down, we knew this would limit the offense, and it limited it big time. Before Ramie's thoughts on the injury and what this offense looked like minus Purdy, here was George Kittle talking about how much this impacted the team.
Yeah, I mean, you dress 2 quarterbacks when neither one of them can throw and neither one of them is really available. Kind of limits what you could do as an offense, kind of limits our playbook to like 15 plays. So you only do so much. As soon as Purdy came back in, they put 6 guys on line of scrimmage. They loaded the box, and it's not like we can do any play actions or anything off it. So we just kind of had to run into it. And, I'm pumped that my team didn't quit. They were fighting, and whether it was an actual fight or whether they're just doing everything they can to be violent, I love it. Completely terrible circumstance, but, those boys didn't quit out there.
It was, like I said, Nick, just a depressing game. I don't know if you remember on Friday, I said, man, Brock Purdy needs to make sure he stays upright and healthy, because if he goes down And I know I said this when Jimmy G went down, but if Brock Purdy goes down, that's a wrap. Cancel Christmas, kiss the baby. It's over for the 49ers and their Super Bowl hopes. The play where he did get hurt didn't stand out to me as one of those where he was holding on to the ball for too long and put himself in harm's way. It was just a good pass rush and an unfortunate hit on the elbow there, man. I went to a local establishment to watch the game yesterday. By the way, another invite passed along to the Cattles and rejected. I just want to put that out there.
I don't even want to. I'll tell you later what happened to the Cattles is yesterday. Let's just say we did not end up at any establishment.
It wasn't an open invite, which you took offense to. It was an invite.
Yes,
and once again, it was just me and my lady. But I digress. And when I first got there, it was a little light. The crowd was a little light. Everybody's like, oh, you better get there early. It's going to be crowded. So we got there early, and it wasn't crowded. It was a little light. And then 49ers fans started trickling in, and there was a little bit of buzz in the place. And very, very quickly, that buzz was gone, Nick. And by halftime, the buzz was completely dead. And I'm not talking about a buzz from drinking. I just mean like the electricity in the air. It was gone, man. And the place emptied out, including us. Like you just knew, like all the air, all the wind was out of the sails almost immediately. And as if that wasn't enough, Nick Bosa gets hurt on the sidelines. He's just standing on the sidelines getting ready to come in the game, and he gets hurt. Fred Warner got knocked out of the game for a minute. It was just like all the forces, the football gods, whatever you want to call them, were working against the 49ers in that game, and they were just not meant to be in this Super Bowl for whatever reason. I don't know what their sin was that the football gods were so angry, but it just wasn't happening yesterday, man. It just was not happening for the 49ers, Nick.
So beyond me thinking like, all right, this is just disappointing. And I had high hopes for both championship games yesterday. I thought the game yesterday before the Purdy injury was going to be one of the better ones that we've seen all year. I had very, very, very high expectations. So the immediate disappointment, once that settled in, I just thought this is really the worst way to end a great story.
It really is.
Like we've spent the last couple of months talking about the story of Brock Purdy and how it's a great story and how everybody should embrace this story and how he has played as well as you could expect him to play.
And the 49ers story of overcoming not one, but two quarterback injuries, getting to their third quarterback and winning 12 straight to get them to the NFC Championship.
Just everything. Everything was set. And it was just an unbelievably tough way to end a great story. And JJ, if you can get ready to fire the breaking news. I don't know if you can hear me in there. We got some breaking news as we talk about this injury to Brock Purdy and what's going on.
We have it first.
It's Sactown Sports breaking news.
Not good, Ramie. Not good at all. Adam Schefter just tweeted out Brock Purdy suffered a torn UCL that will sideline him 6 months. So Purdy, torn UCL, out for 6 months. And so we go from a bad ending to the season to just bad all around. Schefter also tweets that Purdy is seeking second medical opinions about whether he needs surgery. The Niners are recommending surgery, but no decisions yet. So Purdy is looking for a second opinion. I would guess he'll probably get even a third, maybe even a fourth. But 6 months. Purdy is going to be out for at least 6 months. That leads you to August. That means Purdy will miss training camp. That means Purdy will likely miss at least one, if not a couple of preseason games. And this absolutely, I know some people were talking about this yesterday as soon as the injury happened, but this really does put the 2023 season in jeopardy for Purdy. I mean, he can come back, sure, but he's going to be out for 6 months. Then he's going to have to ramp up. He's a quarterback, man, right? I mean, this is like a starting pitcher having a UCL injury. He's going to be out 6 months doing nothing. So you get back to start working on things in August. I would think you have at least a month or two to start building up your arm strength and go through what you've got to go through. I would be surprised if Brock Purdy is in the plans to start 2023. I mean, you might be able to throw him in there in October, November if things are going bad. But if you're John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, Ramie, you're thinking, okay, we need to go into a different direction for our quarterback position next season.
This sucks, man.
Awful.
This sucks.
Awful.
And obviously we have to talk about the repercussions for the 49ers and where they go from here. But the first thing I always think of when this happens, or at least I try to, is, man, that sucks for that dude. Like, think about the work that Brock Purdy had to put in to be in the situation that he was in. And people were already questioning, like, can you hand the franchise over to this dude based on 8 games and given his path to the NFL and how he came with obviously a lot of question marks as the last guy taken in the NFL draft. And you're 100% right, Nick. Like, this obviously throws that much more doubt or question into the fact of whether or not you can hand the reins or the keys to the franchise over to this guy when you don't even know if he'll be ready by training camp when you're talking about this 6-month timeline. This really, really sucks for Brock Purdy first, but for the 49ers, a close second, thinking, man, we stumbled onto at the very least, we stumbled onto a good quarterback, which, Nick, is a hard thing to find in the NFL. Just a good quarterback. Everybody's looking for the golden child and the great quarterback and the next Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. It's hard enough just to find a good quarterback, and you feel like you just stumbled into one with Brock Purdy, and you have this Cinderella ride all the way to the NFC Championship, and that's how it ends. That is brutal, man. That is just a gut punch.
Brock Purdy out for 6 months, according to Adam Schefter. He's going to get a couple of second opinions here, but it sounds like it's a completely torn UCL. We want your thoughts on Purdy and his injury and the fact now that he is looking at a 6-month absence. 916-339-1140 is the text line. The phone number is 1-800-920-1140. You can follow us on a YouTube channel there, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and like us. It helps us an awful lot. We'll continue the Brock Purdy talk in 90 seconds.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
The only place you'll find Keegan Murray is Sactown Sports.
Out to Keegan Murray, straight away for 3.
just broke the news a few moments ago right here on Sactown Sports. Adam Schefter reporting that Brock Purdy has a completely torn UCL, and he is going to be out for 6 months.
You haven't even recovered from the hangover of that awful football game yesterday, if you're a 49ers fan, and now you get this news.
It's just absolutely brutal.
You ever gotten a second wave hangover? Like it's the afternoon, and you're like, oh, man, I feel sick all over again. That's what this is like for 49ers fans today.
Yeah, like as if yesterday wasn't bad enough.
Right.
Now you get hit by this. But I think some people, felt like this was at least a possibility, if not probability. We played for you to start this show, Brock Purdy's reaction yesterday after the injury and what he told the media. And he said to the media that he felt pain everywhere. And it came out yesterday that it was going to be a UCL. It was just how bad was the UCL injury. And obviously it's bad enough that he's going to be out 6 months. It's completely torn. And for people jumping in their cars right now or joining us on YouTube right now, youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140, give us that thumbs up.
My camera angle's on point today.
For people jumping in, this now leads you to August, right? The end of January. He's out 6 months. That brings you to the beginning of August. He's going to have to go through an entire rehab process. And, part of that, I'm sure, is going to be the 6 month timeline. He might be throwing after, 4 months, 5 months. But he's going to have to jump in and kind of get acclimated once again. And who knows when he's going to be ready. Do the Niners slow play this injury? But for Purdy himself, Ramie, this is brutal, man. This guy was one of the great stories of the NFL season. He is somebody that nobody expected much of anything from. He makes the team. Then he ends up being the starting quarterback.
That right there was unlikely.
Yeah.
Like we can't even just skip right over makes the team. That right there was unlikely for that dude. Just that part. Like they thought we have a guy that we can stash on the practice squad and maybe develop into a reliable backup someday. Don't forget, Nate Sudfeld was given good backup money, like not big quarterback money, but good backup money to come here and back up Trey Lance. And then the whole picture changed when they decided to bring Jimmy G back in the fold. And at that point, they could have just gone with Trey Lance and Jimmy G. Plenty of teams will go with just two quarterbacks. Not only did they not go with just two quarterbacks, they went with three and cut Sudfeld to stick with Brock Purdy as the number 3 quarterback because they thought that much of him and they thought somebody would take him and put him on their active roster. Him just making the roster was a long shot when he reported to Santa Clara.
Yeah, not many Mr. Irrelevance make rosters. Not many of those guys make it anywhere above, the practice squad. So, I mean, this is just really tough for Purdy because we're going to now look at, an 8-game sample or whatever it was, if that. You all have to kind of put the timing together of how much he actually played yesterday. And I mean, this is somebody who has played under 10 NFL games. He was on the precipice of helping his team get to the Super Bowl. Many people over the last week or two have been reporting that Purdy was going to be QB1 in 2023, no matter what, that Trey Lance was going to be at least his backup, if not traded out of San Francisco. And now if you're Purdy, it has to be so disheartening to do what you have done, to get to the point that you got to now have this happen. And we're talking about somebody who doesn't have necessarily great arm strength to begin with. That's not one of his traits that you would brag about to NFL scouts, right, and to teams and say, oh, man, that dude can sling it.
Maybe this is a rookie of the year situation.
But you're right. When you look at it, yeah, hopefully for him. I mean, they do say that UCL injuries and Tommy John surgeries and all that stuff, guys come back throwing harder. Yeah. So who knows? But he's also playing a physical, violent game, unlike baseball. So this is a very difficult situation to be handed. Very difficult situation to be handed. And on YouTube, David Neal says, brutal. Cole G is Purdy is QB3 again. Feel bad for him. TCG says, feel so bad for Purdy after what he accomplished. Yeah, I mean, I think, what he had brought to this team was really a sense of comfort because the Jimmy G stuff always hovered above, and everybody was always so worried about Jimmy G, and rightfully so, with his injury history and, the lack of trust in the past in Jimmy in postseasons, all those kinds of things. Jimmy gets hurt. You move on to Purdy. I don't think anybody believed in Trey Lance after his injury again and the lack of football that he's played.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this calming sense, Ramie, I think, within this organization and from fans to say, all right, well, we didn't know what we had in Lance. It didn't look great. Jimmy G, again, is hurt. Maybe we fell into something here with Brock Purdy, and now you're back to square one. You're back to sitting there and saying, well, okay, well, you got Lance, who was a complete unknown. Jimmy G's a free agent. And now you got Purdy, who was supposed to be your QB1 with a torn UCL.
What is going on with 49ers quarterbacks, man? Like, is there...
You want to talk about JJ's juju. I mean, he's a Niners fan. I don't know if we got to send him down there to hang out in the facility to help this.
It's the Kaepernick curse, man.
The curse of Kaepernick.
The Kaepernick curse, brother.
Is that a thing? Or did you just make that up?
No,
right
that's
now,
a thing, man.
Oh, really?
That's a Jay's thing.
I mean, you look at it, and since then, yeah, they haven't had the greatest of luck at quarterbacks, man. Yeah, I mean, this is we're just getting this news now as well, Nick, and I'm sure the 49ers are also right now just throwing every idea up at the wall about what do we do about the quarterback position now.
Think about it this way. So Purdy's contract, right? For 2022, it was $705,000. Next year was set to be $870,000, and 2024 was set to be $985,000. This completely changes, Ramie. This completely changes your offseason plan and what you might be capable of doing. When you look at this, you go off the timeline. Again, if it's 6 months, he's back in the beginning of August, which means he's going to miss the entire offseason program. I mean, I imagine you have to, if you're John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, start thinking about contingencies at quarterback. But beyond that, the team. I mean, you've got a lot of free agents coming up. You've got to sign Nick Bosa. And if you could have walked into 2023 with a guaranteed Brock Purdy as your quarterback making $800,000, you could then allocate all that other money to the guys on this team, signing them to extensions, and then going into free agency. You've got McGlinchey coming up. You've got the Bosa decision. You've got a lot of things that you've got to figure out. And now you thought, before yesterday, I think if you're John Lynch, you thought we have a lot of wiggle room because our most likely QB1 is going to be making less than $1 million next year.
Literally as cheap as you can get at the quarterback position. And I talked before the season, Nick, when we were talking about handing the reins over to Trey Lance, about the fact that this is a team that's right in the heart of a Super Bowl window. And those aren't things that you want to just throw away. You know what I mean? Or even put at risk of handing it over to a rookie or an inexperienced quarterback. And now they're right back in the position of trying to figure out, how do we capitalize on and get the most out of this year in the middle of a championship window? Because take Joe Burrow, for example. When he went down in his rookie year, they still weren't in a contending window. So they looked at that and just went, well, we just push everything back a year now in terms of when we're competitive and contenders. 49ers don't have that luxury.
No.
They are in the middle of it right now. And whenever you're in a Super Bowl window, it's waning. Like every day that passes is another day where you're closer to the end of that Super Bowl window and the chance of it going to waste. So this is a huge decision at the most important position in the sport that yet again the 49ers have to make this offseason with the news of the Brock Purdy injury.
916-339-1140 is the text line. The number, of course, is 1-800-920-1140. YouTube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. I know it's not happy content we're having today, but if you would like to help us out, give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up, and as Ramie said, get on the couch and try to, vent, talk this thing out.
We're here for you.
But we continue with the news from Adam Schefter of ESPN. If you're just joining us, Brock Purdy will be out for at least 6 months with a complete tear of his UCL in the throwing elbow. He will undergo surgery, according to Tom Pelissero. Schefter says that surgery has not been decided just yet, Purdy is going to look for other opinions. So it does sound like Purdy's looking at 6 months, but we still have to figure out if Purdy is going to continue to get opinion after opinion before he does anything like getting opened up, or if this is just, hey, look, I'll get 1 second opinion, and then by the end of this week, I'll be getting opened up for this surgery. But Brock Purdy will be out 6 months. We have more reaction to that coming up next.
Cattles
And Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Don't miss your final chances at $50,000 with Lasher's Outgrow.
Ramie.
on Sactown Sports.
As you just heard from JJ, Brock Purdy out at least 6 months, according to Adam Schefter.
It's brutal.
Trying to figure out what the next step is. When surgery happens, Purdy will reportedly look for a second opinion, at least one of them. I would not be surprised if he gets a couple of other opinions.
I'd be looking for every opinion I could find until somebody told me, no, you're good. Go play football.
My girlfriends, the Cattles and Ramie show, Schefter, the doctor.
I'm trying to find somebody who can
parents
let me live in denial and just tell me, run back out there on that field, young man.
And look, we'll have plenty of time tomorrow. We have a full show, full 4 hours tomorrow to discuss the future and where the Niners might go now that Purdy looks very unlikely to start the 2023 season as QB1. But right now is about Purdy, and right now is about what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are thinking. And I mentioned last segment, Ramie, and I just kind of want to drill down on this a little bit more. The idea of Purdy's contract, like we always hear rookie contract for a quarterback worth its weight in gold. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the key pieces of having Purdy as QB1 next year was going to be, hey, man, he's going to make $870,000 as your starting quarterback and what you could do with all of the other money. So I've been kind of just sweeping through the internet, which is always dangerous. Less dangerous here, though, because Bonneville wipes out a lot of websites.
I was wondering why you were so quiet during the break. What were you
well, you look at –
what were you sifting through over there?
I was looking at salary cap money that teams will have at their disposal because I know today the NFL announced – that the salary cap will be $224.8 million, which is a just huge bump. It's over a $16 million bump from last offseason to this offseason. So that's good news for the Niners. But I wanted to see how much money they had. And according to SI.com, and this was just, 1 hour ago, when you look at teams with cap space, you've got the Chicago Bears. There you go, Ramie, with like $92 million.
They won't
use
it right.
Try and get the moolah.
But you go down to the Niners, and the Niners have $16.4 million. So pretty much the Niners are right up against the cap right now. And if you look at it, according to SI.com, and this was written 1 hour ago, this is accounting for the salary cap bump.
Right.
$16 million in space. So let's go through some of the free agents the Niners are dealing with. Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll talk more about him, I think, tomorrow, but he is an unrestricted free agent. Jimmy Ward, who did a great job in the nickel this year, is a free agent. This is unrestricted. Ebicom, free agent. I mentioned this guy last segment. McGlinchey, free agent. Al Shire, free agent. Robbie Gould, free agent. He's 40, but Robbie Gould, free agent. Other guys that meant a lot to this team this year, Tayshaun Gibson, free agent. He's 32, a little long in the tooth for a safety, but Gibson is a free agent. And you just start to look at the names. Jake Brendel, who gave you some depth on the offensive line. Charles Omenihu, who played fantastic against Seattle. One of the reasons why you were able to win that Seattle game. Omenihu is going to be an unrestricted free agent. And then you get to restricted free agents. And, you're not too worried about those guys, Flanagan, Fowles, McKivitz. But don't forget, you were also staring straight in the eye a Nick Bosa contract negotiation. And people thought that Bosa might get done last offseason. John Lynch said we're in no rush. And I disagreed with that. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. I thought they should have tried harder to get Bosa done. I know JJ was a little irritated and frustrated by, John Lynch. That's kind of their calling card. And it hasn't backfired for the most part with John Lynch.
Yeah.
He waits, and then he'll get a deal done.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to jump the gun too early and give a guy an extension when he still has a year or 2 years on his contract.
Which we talked about it. And with the NFL and the injuries being what they are and futures being as uncertain as they are, I almost don't blame him to want to wait to invest in a player's future. The saving grace there, though, might be, Nick, that with Nick Bosa's extension, a lot of the time with these big contract extension, the cap number actually goes down from what it was previous in the first year of that new deal, and then it ramps up as the years go on and the guaranteed money sort of funnels into the cap.
So we all look at Purdy on the field. This is going to impact the team. Obvious, right? And like I said, I think we'll get to that a lot more tomorrow about what the future might be there at quarterback for 2023. This is more of a Purdy situation right now. And we always talk about Purdy on the field, his impact on the field, and there was plenty of impact on the field. Again, you felt like you could trust this guy. You felt like you could take a breath and say, okay, maybe he's our answer for 2023. But off the field, this is as big. Because off the field, again, you got $16 million in space.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do this Nick Bosa thing. You've got to figure out McGlinchey, all the free agents I just read, to not just, the guys that you don't want to re-sign on that free agency list. You have to replace them. You're not going to be able to replace everybody via the draft. And you also have to find, most likely, a quarterback that you could actually depend on. And that's going to cost you money. They might have to spend every cent of their money they have right now open, quote unquote, for free agent. They might have to spend all of that on a quarterback to replace Purdy. And then you also have to remember, Ramie, draft picks, they cost money.
Yep.
You have to keep a certain amount of millions of dollars on the side to address your draft picks. I'm not telling you it's impossible for Shanahan and Lynch to figure this out. What I'm telling you is, their job to massage and maneuver this money and be able to put a team on the field that would be close to what you had this season just got much tougher.
And I'll throw this wrinkle in there at you, Nick, as if the picture wasn't complicated enough. As Tim Kawakami pointed out last week, Trey Lance actually cost more against the cap in a trade than he would if you kept him. So if you're going to bring a quarterback in from the outside, the question is, okay, now do you trade Trey Lance and deal with those cap ramifications? I think you said it was about $6 million more against the cap if you trade Trey Lance versus actually keeping him. Or do you keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster because you're not cutting Brock Purdy? You know what I mean? He's going to be one of your quarterbacks. Trey Lance, you either trade him or keep him. If you bring a quarterback in from the outside, the quarterback picture is very, very muddled. And not only in terms of what the depth chart looks like, but trying to figure out all the money and how many of those guys you're going to keep on the roster next year. This creates a mess for the 49ers and at the quarterback position.
With your history, it feels like you better draft a quarterback too.
You better have 4 ready to go.
Like if I'm John Lynch, I'm drafting a quarterback every year. And that was an old school, I forget his name, Green Bay Packers.
Ron Wolf.
Yes, Ron Wolf strategy, which is like draft a quarterback every year.
Every year.
You'll figure it out. You don't have to draft a quarterback in the first 2 rounds every year, but draft a quarterback every year.
You can't have too many good quarterbacks.
Not with this team, especially.
No. In the NFL period, you can't have too many quarterbacks.
I mean, our guy, Emil Fragoso, Sactown Sports, tweeted out, Purdy torn UCL, Jimmy G suffered a broken foot, Lance fractured fibula, ligament damage that required 2 surgeries on his ankle. Let's not forget that Lance had to go back and get a second surgery.
You forgetting Josh Johnson?
Josh Johnson got a concussion. That dude literally played like a few snaps and immediately got hurt.
Don't forget him now, Nick.
It might be tough to find a quarterback in free agency. They might be like, nah, I ain't signing with you.
I'm good. I don't want to line up at quarterback for the 49ers.
I know your history. I'm not doing that. By the way, when we have guests, they come to you from the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda,
your one-stop Honda shop.
Yeah, JJ was not here last week to know the sing-song that Kyle and Simone roped us into. Yeah, wasn't my idea. Sounded okay, though.
It was my idea. I'm not going to lie. It was my idea.
All right, so we'll continue with thoughts on Brock Purdy. We also have to touch on the AFC Championship game. That's all coming up next.
With you 1 mile at a time during the afternoon drive. Check out the Golf to Go out.
Sactown Sports.
If you're just joining us, Brock Purdy will be out for at least 6 months. Still no word on whether or not he's going to have the surgery. Adam Schefter reporting that it is a complete tear of the UCL and Purdy's throwing elbow. And again, 6 months will lead us to the end of July, beginning of August, which means he's going to miss the offseason program.
This explains why he couldn't throw the ball more than 5 yards yesterday, right?
How tough is that dude to be out there slinging footballs? And I know he didn't sling it 30 yards. It doesn't matter. He's out there playing
he's a monster.
a physical, violent game, and he's out there doing whatever he can do to try to help this football team, knowing that it was not good. He said it. JJ, can we get that Purdy sound again, him explaining what he felt when the injury happened? Listen to this from Purdy yesterday.
Yeah, just my arm just felt like it stretched out. Just felt like really a lot of just shocks all over from my elbow down to my wrist, front and back. Just pain, really, all over.
Dude was in pain yesterday and told his team, no, we're not going to run CMC out there as a quarterback. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do what I can do to the best of my ability to try to help this team win. And he threw a couple of screens, but still, this dude had a completely torn UCL, Ramie.
I saw somebody tweeting at Carmichael Dave this morning and harkened back to the name of Ronnie Lott and the infamous story that he cut his pinky off to play for the 49ers. And
it's only a pinky.
If Brock Purdy had the guts of a Ronnie Lott, then the 49ers might be going to the Super Bowl. What did you want him to do? Especially now that we know this news. What did you want that dude? Like, can't cut off your arm.
No.
What did you want Brock Purdy to do if he wasn't tough enough for you yesterday, running out there with a torn UCL? And I knew it was coming, man.
Ric Flair tweeted out that he survived the plane crash. He did.
Good for him.
He's like, I survived the plane crash. Come on.
In reference to Brock Purdy, he said that? Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Good for you, Ric Flair.
He's a habitual line stepper.
Yes,
where is
sure.
it? I have a there it is.
For sure.
Yeah. Hit at Ric Flair. He did at Brock Purdy 13. I crashed in an airplane. Get in the game. Like what? What the?
Huh?
What are we doing here?
What? It's so ridiculous. But man, yeah, no, you're right. How tough is that dude to run back out there with a torn UCL? Now knowing what he was going through, and I mean, do whatever he could, man. Were you with me, Nick? Did you want to see a little bit of Christian McCaffrey Wildcat action when you saw when you saw what Brock Purdy was capable of? No,
nope.
Not at all. Really?
Not at all.
Okay. I was like, hey man, let's go. Like what is there to lose at this point? Let's just
McCaffrey's future with his injury history.
You know what? The way quarterbacks have been going down for the 49ers,
Shanahan was like, look,
you might be onto something there.
We started with Trey Lance, done. Then we went to Jimmy G, done. Then Purdy, done. Then I got Josh Johnson in there, done. You want me to put CMC in there? We know how this story ends. Nah, CMC, you can stay at running back for the rest of this game. We good. By the way, Stefania Bell of ESPN, she's tweeting out, the irony of this Purdy injury is that it is the same injury Nick Mullins suffered when he was playing for the Niners in place of Jimmy Garoppolo in 2020.
Dude.
Mullins underwent a surgical UCL repair with internal brace, whatever that is, less extensive than a complete reconstruction. If Purdy needs a repair, this would make them the only NFL starting quarterbacks to have had the procedure. It's uncanny. And don't forget, Kyle Shanahan was on the Washington staff when RG3 blew out his knee.
The only quarterbacks ever
to
have this procedure, and both were 49ers who
the only
were
starting
playing
quarterback
for the injured Jimmy Garoppolo.
Kyle Shanahan, man.
That's wild.
Just some bad juju.
What do we got to do? We got to burn some sage in the 49ers quarterbacks?
I think we got to go beyond sage with this. I don't know if there's any sage out there that could turn this thing around.
Can we find a clairvoyant of some sort who can break whatever is going on with the 49ers and their quarterbacks? This is wild, man.
It's awful.
That's an incredible story you just read, or that factoid that you just read there.
Thanks to Stefania Bell. All right, we got to move on here for a couple of minutes and squeeze the AFC Championship game in, Ramie, before we go back to Purdy and the Niners. And, you look at this game, we all had high expectations, just like the NFC Championship game. This game was okay. It was not as good as I had hoped it would be. But the major story coming out is obviously Patrick Mahomes and his ability to deal with that high ankle sprain. You saw it affect him when he was forced to go to his left. And his ability to kind of manipulate the pocket and extend plays given what was going on. That last touchdown pass that he threw was ridiculous. The end zone camera angle on that throw, just amazing stuff from Patrick Mahomes. Here was Mahomes in the post game talking about how he felt during the game.
I definitely didn't feel good. I think the worst one was when I fumbled. I try to pick it up, and that was probably the worst tweak that I had during the game. But like I said, they got me close as they could to 100%, and then I just battled through, and I'll have a few more weeks to get it ready.
This is the stuff legends are made of, man.
Yeah.
And I don't want this necessarily to be the stuff legends are made of, because I want guys to think about their health and, their life beyond football first and foremost before we're talking about winning a football game. But this is literally the type of stuff that you talk about years and years down the road when we're talking about the legacy of Patrick Mahomes and going out and doing what he did basically on one leg. Yeah. Well, I'll say 1.5 legs because he had some mobility. But Nick, you talked about some of the throws. His run for the first down on what ended up being the final play, and obviously the 15 yards tacked on by the end on the late hit by Osai, but his run at the end there on that leg is one of the most impressive things he did all day. That was incredible.
Yes, it was incredible. And there's no doubt this dude, he cares about what he does.
He's the best in the world. If there was any doubt before yesterday, he's the best in the world playing the game right now.
He's going to compete. And let's also not forget, because we're all going to focus on the ankle injury and what he was going through physically. But, I mean, wide receivers were dropping like flies during the game. Marquez Valdez-Scantling ended up being the biggest impact skill position player in that game. Tony went down. Hardman went down. And here he is. Travis Kelce was banged up. He played well, but he was a little banged up with his back. So with very little depth at wide receiver, with a high ankle sprain, here he is doing what he's doing. You did mention Joseph Asai, obviously just a dumb penalty. I mean, I don't know what you're doing there. I don't know what you're thinking. Here's how Osai tried to explain his thought process during that just bad penalty.
I was just in full chase mode, and I was trying to push him to maybe get him going backwards, because I knew he was going for that sideline. I was trying to make him go backwards, get that clock running, but I didn't know. I haven't seen it yet. I didn't know how far out of bounds we were, but yeah.
I feel bad for the dude, man. I really do. I feel bad for the dude.
I feel bad for him, but I do not believe him what he just said.
What do you mean?
He was hitting Patrick Mahomes to try to stop his forward momentum, and he was thinking, if I hit him and he goes backwards, the clock is going to. He's thinking all of that as he's chasing down Patrick Mahomes live.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what he was thinking, but I didn't feel like it was.
What he's saying is the old what happened with Dallas last week. Remember when Schultz caught the football and he went backwards, which stopped.
Oh yeah, it would stop the clock before
the clock
he went out of
keeps
bounds.
going.
Yeah.
So if he said, I don't like, he's running from behind.
There was no way he was going to.
There's no way that's
backwards. I don't know what he was thinking, Nick. I think it was just. I don't think it was. I don't even know where to draw the line on this, but sometimes guys will make that play and it almost seems like they knew what they were doing in the moment. Like they just lost their cool and they knew what they were doing in the moment. I genuinely felt like that was a guy who made an over aggressive play, but nothing. I don't even know how to describe it. You know what? Like sometimes it seems malicious and almost intentional when somebody makes that play. I didn't get that sense at all on that play yesterday. I think things were moving very fast. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't think it was what he described, but I felt nothing but bad for that. Even in the immediate moment afterwards, I was like, oh, that maybe it's because he was laying there holding his knee, But I just felt terrible for that dude, that loss is going to be put on him for a snap decision, in heat of the moment, instant decision that he made right there. I felt bad for him.
One more name I'll bring up, Chris Jones, because everybody's going to talk about Mahomes, rightfully so. Chris Jones was a beast in that game. They were doubling him. He was mowing through double teams. He moved all along the defensive line. I don't know how many pressures he had. He had a couple of sacks. It felt like he was in the backfield breathing down Burrow's neck all day long. He was absolutely terrific.
The referees were kind of terrible, right? I thought they were terrible in both games.
They called the Asai penalty. I don't have any problem with that. I thought the Bengals got hosed. There were, to me, it looked like there were not one but two blocks in the back on the punt return. And then on the play that we're talking about, I tweeted this out because somebody sent me a screenshot of the offensive line play, and I tweeted out the full video. You can check it out at Nick C Radio. It certainly looked, to me, like since he was getting held around the neck on that play, which allowed Mahomes to escape. And it was a very similar play that was called on the Cincy offensive line just before then as a whole.
The do-over, the mulligan play.
Can we do better than a dude 40 yards away waddling onto the field, waving his arms, going, no, this isn't supposed to count. It's 2023.
It was bad.
Absolutely
I thought they were bad in both games. I know we'll get to the 49ers in the 3 o'clock. I thought the referees were bad in both games. And you can't have that on championship weekend, man.
916-339-1140. Text line, phone number 1-800-920-1140. We'll keep on moving along here. We've got Brock Purdy to talk about. And, how is this going to affect him? How is this going to hold him back moving forward? We'll talk about that and much more coming up next.
Cattles
and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
For your everyday vehicle. Right now, you can get
1 mile at a time during the afternoon drive. Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Well, if you're just joining us, the news of the day is not good news. Adam Schefter reports the following. Brock Purdy suffered a torn UCL in his right elbow. That's the ulnar collateral ligament. Purdy is seeking second medical opinions about whether he needs surgery, which the Niners are recommending. So when you look at this, the Niners are saying, hey, get the surgery. And Purdy's saying, I don't know if I want to get the surgery just yet. Allow me to look at my options.
I don't blame him.
And Schefter says that regardless of Purdy's decision on surgery, the injury is expected to sideline Purdy for 6 months. So again, if you just go off of that timing, if he is sidelined, which means to me he's not throwing. Sideline means sideline. You're not on the field. You're
That's
not
what I took it to mean.
Yeah,
too.
you're not working out. I mean, you are certainly rehabbing to strengthen your arm and the ligament, right? I mean, you're going to go, but you're not out there throwing 35, 40 passes and getting reps, so to speak, as a quarterback. So he is very unlikely to start throwing the football again until like August. And as I mentioned last hour, Ramie, if you go off of this timeline now, if you are the Niners and Niners fans, you're listening, if you go off of this timeline, he will be back on the field in early August. You have to give him at least, I don't even know, a month, 3 weeks to a month to start throwing the football around, to start, testing the arm strength and getting used to the action of throwing a football. And now you're looking at the end of September with, no game reps, nothing. So, I mean, it's certainly possible with being sidelined 6 months that he could be back by the early to middle part of the season in 23. But then you just have to ask the question of what do the Niners do at quarterback? Because it's not like you can sit there and say, all right, well, we'll find some dude who can take over for a couple of weeks until you get back. Because A, you have to know the surgery went well. B, he has to heal the way you would hope he is supposed to heal. As we know, that did not happen with Trey Lance. Trey Lance did not heal the way he was supposed to, and doctors had to go back into that, ankle and foot and deal with all the other stuff that was going on and take the screws out. So he had 2 surgeries. And then you're talking about a guy, Ramie, and this is what I think some of us, including myself, we might lose the idea of, hey, man, it was his rookie season this year. Like he has to go through a full install and he has to, all right, what works for you? What works for me as far as a playbook? This was, if he was going to be quarterback number 1 in 2023, this entire offseason and then the offseason program was going to be geared towards him. Yes, it was going to be dedicated to Brock Purdy. Now, dependent on what you do at quarterback, and again, we'll get into that a lot more tomorrow. We're only on for another half hour leading you to game night for the Kings T-Wolves game at 5 o'clock. But now, dependent on who you bring in, you are going to dedicate your offseason program to that quarterback, not to Purdy. So Purdy is going to have to, instead of being the guy, getting all the number 1 reps, being treated as the guy and committed to, and all right, what works for you? What are your favorite plays, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things are going to be dedicated to a different guy. And Purdy is going to have to slide to the back once again.
Isn't it wild that we're talking about the quarterback situation with the 49ers and a team that's a Super Bowl contender in the way that we're talking about it now? And I've brought up this point before, Nick, but it keeps getting crazier. And now with the Brock Purdy injury, it got even a little, the fact that we're having this discussion gets even that much crazier. No team that's solidly in the Super Bowl discussion and in an NFC championship for the 3rd time in 4 years is in every one of those years going into the offseason going, all right, well, what are we going to do at quarterback? You know what I mean? It's insane that's where we are. And you're right. We're going to talk about this a lot more tomorrow. But can I just tell you because we're digesting this the same way that everybody in their car, everybody at their desk watching us on YouTube might be digesting this, and the wheels are turning. Can I tell you what thought just ran through my head, Nick? And that might have JJ break through the glass in the producer's booth and come in here and choke me out, being the 49ers fan that he is. You know who, like you were just describing, like the quarterback position and what they're going to need to get in place. You know who's the perfect man for the job to bring in here and settle this whole thing down?
You better not.
At least until Brock Purdy
You
is
better not.
healthy and ready to go. Jimmy Garoppolo. It's Jimmy G.
Both frustrated and angry.
I'm sorry.
Jimmy G is like
it is.
He's like the guy that, like he is the movie villain that never dies and comes back. And
He's Michael Myers, man. He's Jason
Michael Myers.
Voorhees.
That's who I was thinking of. I couldn't remember the name.
You electrocute him, drown him, shoot him, stab him, hit him with a car, put him in a washing machine. It doesn't matter. He's coming back.
He's the perfect dude.
No.
He knows the playbook, so you can still put your attention and energy into Purdy and Trey Lance if you want to. I'm sorry.
Again, because Ramie can't help himself. He has to go to the possible down the road scenario. Jimmy G is going to be on the list.
It's just the craziest thought that just ran through my head right now. I had to get it out there.
He's going to be on the list. He has to be on the list just because of his history within the system and because he's going to be a free agent. I'm more focused on, at least today, how this impacts Brock Purdy. And this would be the second young quarterback that Kyle Shanahan and company kind of had this developmental program in mind, how you would move along with this young quarterback, and now an injury absolutely derails it. Like you had Trey Lance, right? You went through the whole offseason program. We went through all the Trey Lance talk. Lance gets on the field, and it didn't look great at the beginning, but you're thinking, hey, we're going to get through the season. He's going to progress. Shanahan had this in mind. They'll figure it out. Then he goes down. And then you had to do the stopgap thing with Jimmy. And then you get Purdy, and it's like you're reliving the same story. You got Purdy through this late portion of the season. He played as well as you could possibly expect. You're thinking, hey, we'll get into the offseason program. We will,
now we can really ramp this thing up, like really get him ready to be an NFL quarterback. Whole offseason, get him in the classroom.
We now know what he does well.
Practice field. He's got rhythm and timing with all his receivers and all these weapons that he's got around him. He's got 8-9 games of experience under his belt playing with those guys. And now you're back to square one, man. Back to square one.
And it impacts everything. It impacts everything. It impacts what you do in the offseason money-wise, because now you are not going to have somebody as a QB1 making less than $1 million. It impacts your offseason program. Who is now going to come in? Who is now going to be your QB1? How are you going to bring a guy in who is immediately that QB1? Or are you going to do some of the same dance you did this year? Are you going to bring back Trey Lance and maybe even Jimmy G, as you just brought up, and go through that all over again?
It's despicable.
Are you going to bring somebody in who might not be like, okay, right away he's QB1, but you bring somebody in to compete against Trey Lance because you still have hopes that maybe Purdy will be ready after the first month and a half of the season? Like this is a gigantic puzzle that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have to put together. And it just feels like, they had, at least to us, as they told us, they had figured out what that puzzle was going to be this year. It got destroyed. Then they felt like they had the puzzle put together for next year, and it's now been destroyed.
Two-part question for you, Nick Cattles. Part of this is totally conjecture and speculation. Do you think they were ready to hand this thing over to Brock Purdy next year as the starter before this injury happened? And had you seen enough that you were comfortable with Brock Purdy being the starter going into next year?
I will answer that. We'll also have a lot more to talk about with the Niners
I
at
asked a two-part
916.
question right before the break. That's my bad.
916-339-1140. The phone number is 1-800-920-1140. Don't forget, all guests come to you from the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. I will answer Ramie's question, or questions, plural, and a whole lot more coming up in 90 seconds.
Cattles and Ramie.
Sactown Sports.
Sactown Sports.
It is 3:14 on this Monday. Time check brought to you by West Coast Men's Health Acoustic Wave Therapy. So, Ramie, for the people just jumping into the car.
Yes, Nick.
Your two-part question before we took a little bit of a sidestep there for 90 seconds.
Were you ready to or are comfortable with the 49ers handing over the starting job to Brock Purdy based on the 8 games that we saw pre-injury? As we learned today, he has the torn UCL. And do you think they were? Now, that second part is just speculation.
I still would have brought somebody in for competition, whether they thought that was going to be Trey Lance or not. I don't know. I wanted to see how Purdy played against Philly. I really did, because I did not think he was good against Dallas. And I thought the Eagles' defense and pass rush was going to be even more difficult than that. And I wanted to see him on the road. I mean, still to this day, it's crazy. He's played, in essence, one road game, because they played against Vegas in Vegas, which really wasn't a road game.
Yeah.
And they played at Seattle. So he's played one road game, complete road game in the NFL. And I thought that he looked good enough to, be talked about being given the keys for 2023, but I probably still would have brought somebody in to compete. Now, am I saying I would have brought somebody in that I thought that hands down would beat Purdy in a competition?
Like a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I'd probably rather roll with Purdy because of the system and the scheme and all that stuff and everything we've talked about. But I would have brought in another veteran to see, just in case, if this Purdy thing wasn't working and you got into the season. And I probably would have had, Lance, Purdy, and another guy, whoever that is, to at least challenge. But, I think that the Niners were probably leaning strongly to that because the leaks came out.
I do too.
And I think, I saw Michael Silver tweet this earlier, like, oh, yeah, people don't think the Niners leak. Yeah, sure. The Niners leak all the time. They leak all the time. They got a leaky boat. They got Kyle Shanahan. I was told this by Greg Bedard, who is a legitimate, trusted NFL insider.
Yeah.
And he said, Shanahan and John Lynch, they pay a lot of attention to what people are saying. They listen and they hear the noise. And so, yeah, they leak. And so when that story came out about, Purdy's going to be QB1, without a doubt, I tend to believe that was San Francisco leaking that information.
And I do too. And I was not quite ready to make that leap. As, an observer, they obviously see a lot more of Brock Purdy than I do and know more about football than I do, doing what they do for a living. But I wasn't quite ready to make that leap as somebody who watches the 49ers week in and week out. I'd have been okay with some kind of open competition between Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, because the thing I kept coming back to, Nick, you brought up earlier in the show, former Packers and Raiders general manager Ron Wolf and his philosophy, his theory that you draft a quarterback every year and let the chips fall where they may, and you can't have too many good quarterbacks. I tend to go with that philosophy, and especially when you don't have a guy who's flashed or shown the franchise potential. You know what I mean?
Right.
And as good as things looked with Brock Purdy, I did find myself wondering, like, what if the 49ers were right about Trey Lance and everything that they saw in him, and that ceiling, those heights are still possible? If that's the case, then the ceiling for this 49ers offense is higher with Trey Lance than it would be with Brock Purdy. And as good as it looked with Brock Purdy, you will always look for better, especially at that position. And so in my eyes, I thought that was the route to go, is have those two guys compete for the number one job. I wasn't really too interested in bringing a veteran in. This might change that, and I might want to bring a veteran
If you're asking me if I thought Purdy answered the question unequivocally that he's QB1 in the future of this franchise, no. I do not think he answered that. And this goes back to the name Ramie brought up last segment, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more tomorrow. But Jimmy G, what I want Niners fans to think about right now, okay? What I want Niners fans to think about is when Jimmy G was traded for and he joined the team, and then he ended up getting into a game, right? And he finished, JJ, what was it, 6 or 7 games Garoppolo finished that year because there was an injury? 7. Remember how good Jimmy G looked those 7 games? Remember Jimmy G was looking like a top 10 quarterback those 7 games when he came in? I think the Niners won every game, or they were 6-1 or something. He looked great. Team was winning. And I remember talking about it because I remember saying, look at who he played.
Mm-hmm.
He played a bunch of cupcakes, and he played a number of teams that had quit on the season already. Jimmy G played at a good level, and people were excited. And inevitably, what happened? Inevitably, we got to the point, not me, not Ramie, not JJ. Inevitably, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan said, Jimmy G is not good enough. He does not have a high enough ceiling. We have to make a dramatic move and draft somebody at number 3 overall in the draft.
Right.
So it's a small sample size. And I would have wanted to see more of him. He would have had the inside track, as I said, unless I could go out there and land somebody that I knew right away was going to be, unbelievable. And, Aaron Rodgers, Brady, other names. But you also have to think about the ramifications on the rest of the team. It's not just Brock Purdy versus this guy. It's Brock Purdy making $800,000 versus this guy making $30, $40, $50 million. And how that impacts the rest of your team and how that impacts free agency. It's a huge domino effect. All right, a couple of other things I wanted to bring up here. I am not telling you, okay, I want people to listen closely here. I'm not telling you that Kyle Shanahan is the reason why they lost that game yesterday. It's not even close. Obviously, the number one reason is your starting quarterback went out. You had your 4th string quarterback in the game, and you lost pretty much almost all hope once that happened. You also had a billion flags on the defense, which were just ill-timed over and over and over again. First downs by penalty yesterday, the Eagles had 7, the Niners had 0. And multiple penalties led to not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. I do think Shanahan did himself and his team a disservice yesterday by going into the game the way they went into the game, thinking they were going to block Hassan Reddick with a backup tight end and have Jawan Jennings chip him. I think that was a terrible error. And because you had a backup tight end trying to block Hassan Reddick, who was an all-pro this year, one-on-one, that was the hit that did in Brock Purdy. Now, yeah, quarterbacks get hit all the time and they don't damage their UCLs. But the point is, your quarterback doesn't get hurt if he doesn't get hit. He doesn't get hit if you're trying to have your backup tight end block one-on-one, one of legitimately the best pass rushers in the game this year. I did not like Shanahan's protection plan going in. He tried to chip Reddick with Jennings. Jennings missed him. Kittle was late going over to block him because he thought Jennings was going to chip him, and Reddick smashed Josh Johnson later in the game.
Yeah, that was never going to work. Yeah, he's the one who concussed Josh Johnson, right?
Like, so that was bad. That was bad. And I also disagree with the end of the first half, which we don't have time to get into because it would go down a rabbit hole. I thought if it's me, I'm playing conservative at the end of the first half. I'm not blaming Shanahan for the fumble. The fumble is obviously on Josh Johnson, but I would have handled that more conservatively. Down by 7 with your fourth string quarterback in the game. Let's get into the locker room down a touchdown.
Yeah.
Let's reset everything. You were getting the football to begin the second half. I would have gone conservative. Shanahan did not go conservative,
and especially with the backup quarterback,
and it bit him. Yep.
The fourth quarterback that you had to go to this year. I'm especially playing a conservative right there. If it's still Purdy in the game, I may be trying to drive down and at least get 3. But with Josh Johnson, I'm not asking that guy to do too much. It's literally his second drive in the game after your team just had what seems like their hopes busted with Brock Purdy going down. I'm going to go back into the locker room, gather my team, collect, hopefully calm everything down, go through some things with Josh Johnson. We'll come out and give him our best shot in the second half.
I agree. Quickly, Kings, T-Wolves. Kings lost on Saturday night. Bench wasn't great again. De'Aaron Fox had a very weird game. He looked like he was like in a coma for the first 3 quarters to only drop like 21 in the fourth. Can they get this done?
I think they can. I said take 1 of 2 in Minnesota, and this road trip is right on schedule, right on pace for what I was hoping they'd get out of it. So I'm not panicked yet.
I'm not panicked. Don't allow them to shoot like crazy from 3. Defend D'Angelo Russell to start this game.
Anthony Edwards is really
good.
He
made a number of tough shots though. So look, I don't think the T-Wolves will shoot as good as they shot the other night. You need to start off better tonight. You need a quicker start, especially from De'Aaron Fox. Get going early, and then you can take care of business. So we'll see what happens. Tomorrow we get a full boat, 2 to 6. Thanks to JJ. Great job. Ramie, we'll talk plenty about the Niners' future at quarterback. We'll also react to this game between the Timberwolves and the Kings tomorrow. Till then, it's Cattles and Ramie, Sactown Sports.
Now hurry, go on to the altar. I know you ain't but remember what I taught you. Keep your heart 3 stacks. Keep your heart. Hey.